Please be advised, this episode does have content that some may find distressing. As always, listener discretion is advised and it is not suitable for anyone under the age of 13.
Hello and welcome to episode 45 of It's Murder Up North. First of all, I want to welcome the latest Patreon supporters, Bethan, Joanne, Dan and Katie. Thank you very much for signing up and supporting the show. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, you can sign up for just $1 a month, and you'll be the next to hear your name mentioned on the podcast. As always, I am very thankful for all the support the show gets. It means the world to me to know that you are listening and enjoying It's Murder Up North. Today's episode is a listener suggestion sent to me by Katie via Facebook. So thank you, Katie, for all the information you provided regarding this case and bringing it to my attention. I hope you like what you hear. I am always happy to receive suggestions, so please feel free to message me on Twitter or Facebook if there is a case you would like me to cover. Please check out my podcast of the week from the wonderful hosts of Curly Conspiracies. I love my true crime, but I love a bit of mystery and conspiracy too, and these ladies really deliver. Here is a sneak peek.
Some of these aren't so crazy, but let's pause and talk about Rule 1 again. Maintain humanity under 500 million.
Wait, how did I miss that? 500 million? So how would that compare to today's population?
Okay, so that means that about 85% of our population has to go. Y'all, 85%, that's terrifying.
And this thing is supposed to withstand catastrophic events? Is it supposed to predict something's going to happen to the 85%?
I know. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. What is this?
Hi, everyone. This is Brooke from Curly Conspiracies. I hope you liked the clip from our Georgia Guidestones episode. If you want to find out more about this conspiracy, go to curlyconspiracies.com. Or you can find us on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Now, back to what you all came for.
Now, let's head to the episode. "25-year-old Vicky Wynne Jones was a tall, blonde, bubbly and intelligent woman who was born in 1984. She grew up in the suburbs of Chester, where she lived with her parents Graham and Janet, and her 3 siblings, Lindsay, Lisa and David. By the age of 19, she had met and fallen in love with Michael Roberts, whom she married 6 years later on the 21st of June 2009. Her wedding day was a beautiful occasion, filled with joy and celebration. Dressed in a pure white gown with lilac accents, Vicky was radiant. Her happiness clear from her infectious laughter. She had married the man she wanted to spend her life with, looking forward to starting a family and growing old together. Following their wedding, Michael and Vicky moved into a new-build penthouse apartment with an open-plan living area, a master bedroom with an ensuite bathroom, a spare bedroom and a family bathroom. It was the perfect place for the couple to start their married life. Ideally situated for Michael's job as an assistant manager at a mobile phone shop, and for Vicky's work as a sales rep at a chemical company. On the 1st of December 2009, Michael turned up to work late. He was dishevelled and distracted. One of his colleagues remarked that he had big black bags under his eyes, suggesting that he hadn't slept, and his general appearance and manner was concerning. Michael usually took great pride in his appearance. He was often well-groomed and had a charismatic air about him. Concerned, the colleague inquired what was wrong, and Michael told him that his wife of 5 months had left him. He had stated that, quote, he'd gone home and found Vicky had cleared out all her clothes, taken her passport, and gone. She'd then sent him a text saying, "Really sorry, but I can't be with you anymore. I have someone else." This came as a shock to his colleagues, as well as to Anne, who was a mutual friend of the couple. Michael spoke to Anne later that day and told her about the message he had received off Vicky. Anne was very surprised by the revelation. Without thinking, she blurted out, "I thought you were the one having the affair." Michael's voice cracked on the phone. Offended by the accusation, he retorted, "I have never cheated on Vicky." Anne told him that Vicky would never cheat on him, and he replied, "Well, she is. It's always the quiet ones, you know." The following day, Graham Wynne-Jones, his wife Janet, and daughter Lisa arrived at the apartment, where they were greeted by Michael, who prepared them a meal, and while they sat at the table, he told them about the breakdown of his marriage. He explained that their daughter Vicky had left him for another man. He told them that she had taken all her belongings, and showed them around the flat, pointing out that all his wife's things were gone. The family left the apartment that evening with an unnerving feeling. Vicky was devoted to Michael. She had been dreaming of marrying him almost since the day they had first met. It just didn't seem right that she would just up and leave. They also knew that due to their close relationship as a family, Vicky would have told them if she had planned to leave Michael. Lisa wasn't just her sister, she was her best friend and confidant. If Vicky had met someone else and was planning to leave Michael, she wouldn't have kept it a secret from her sister. With their suspicions heightened, at 9 p.m. that night, Graham contacted Cheshire Police to report his daughter missing. The following morning, officers were dispatched to the place Vicky was last seen, her apartment. When they rang the intercom, Michael cheerfully welcomed them in. They told him that they were investigating a missing persons report and asked to have a look about the property, to which Michael obliged. The officers proceeded to go room to room, looking for any clues to explain where Vicky may have gone. There were no obvious signs of a violent altercation, nothing appeared damaged, and there were no strong odours, such as bleach, which may have suggested someone had tried to get rid of evidence of foul play. On the surface, everything seemed normal, apart from the fact that all Vicky's belongings appeared to be missing, which only corroborated Michael's claim that he had arrived home to find that his wife had left him. Police had one last place to search, the couple's garage, which was positioned in a courtyard separate from the flat. Michael willingly led them there. He opened the door and switched on the light, and the officers proceeded inside. Looking carefully amid all the boxes still waiting to be unpacked, behind which they found a duvet rolled up on the floor. Carefully, one of the officers knelt down and began to lift the blanket, beneath which he discovered the remains of Vicky Roberts. Turning to his colleague, he signalled for him to detain Michael, but the cooperative husband was no longer standing at the entrance of the garage. Knowing that the officers were about to uncover the truth, he had taken the opportunity when their backs were turned to flee. The officers gave chase but lost Michael amid the warren of new-build apartment blocks. Within hours, Cheshire Police released an appeal to the public to help them apprehend Michael Roberts, whom they described as, quote, 6 foot 2 inches tall, with black spiky hair and black eyebrows. He is very slim in build, with brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a black duffel coat and black patent shoes, but may have changed clothes. He occasionally wears small, square-shaped, black-rimmed spectacles. Cheshire Police scoured the area for the wanted man, searching the homes of people he knew. This included the home of the couple's friend Anne, who later stated in a newspaper interview, "The police came to our house looking for him. I told them everything I knew about him, and Vicky, and Kerry, and Karen. I instinctively knew he had killed her." It was the first time police had heard the names of other women, and it was the first time they'd been made aware of the fact that Michael had been cheating on his wife. They now had a motive for the murder. I will come back to the affairs shortly. Michael spent the next 3 days evading police by staying in hotels under fake names. He switched his mobile phone off and attempted to travel unseen. However, his attempts failed. He was spotted just 30 miles away from his home, in the Welsh town of Wrexham. Inexplicably, he was stood outside the Wrexham branch of the mobile phone retailer he worked for, and despite him trying to conceal his identity by covering his face with a scarf and a baseball cap, Lavinia, a member of staff inside the shop, recognised him. She left the shop and approached him, and he guided Lavinia to an alley that ran down the side of the premises, where he could be away from prying eyes. Lavinia looked at Michael with a quizzical gaze and inquired whether he had really hurt Vicky, a thought she found hard to believe. The wanted man told her that he had not intended to kill his wife, and that she had died when she had asked him to tighten a dressing gown cord about her neck during sex. He pleaded with Lavinia to believe him and asked her not to tell anyone she had seen him. Lavinia, however, advised Michael he needed to turn himself in, and moments later she was on the phone to the police, who responded immediately to apprehend the suspect. The police announced that they had arrested a 26-year-old man on suspicion of the murder of Vicky Roberts, and that he was being held for questioning. Michael continued to insist that it was an accident and he did not mean for his wife to die. However, with the strength of the evidence against him, Michael Roberts was formally charged with the murder of Vicky. When the trial began at Liverpool Crown Court, Michael entered a not guilty plea, on the grounds that his wife had died during a sex game which had gone tragically wrong. In recent years there has been an alarming trend in this form of defence, with notable cases such as the murder of Grace Malone. In response to this trend, the campaign group We Can't Consent to This was formed. They found that, quote, in 45% of UK killings so far, a claim that the woman's injuries were sustained in sex gone wrong results in a lesser charge of manslaughter, a lighter sentence, or the death not being investigated as a crime at all. There have been at least 60 UK women killed since 1972. Just in the last 5 years, there have been 18 UK women killed, where the man accused claimed she consented. We Can't Consent to This also learned that more women are reporting being assaulted by partners during sex, with, quote, 38% of UK women under 40 reporting being assaulted, choked, slapped, gagged or spat on in otherwise consensual sex. That equates to 3.6 million women under 40 in the UK who have experienced unbidden violence in sex. This is not just a UK problem. There are women killed and injured in Germany, Canada, Spain, Portugal, Mexico, Australia, Sweden, the US, Ireland and beyond. We Cannot Consent to This state that they do not believe that women can consent to their grievous injury or death, and that they will campaign until claiming this is no longer a useful defence. In July 2012, Parliament supported the amendment to the Domestic Abuse Bill, which means that the consent for sexual gratification as a defence for causing serious harm or death can no longer be accepted in England and Wales. This is a huge step forward. However, the campaign group We Can't Consent to This believe there is more to be done, such as the bill being introduced in Scotland and Ireland. To read more about their work or to support the campaign, please visit wecan'tconsenttothis.uk. I will include a link in the show notes. On their website you will also find the stories of women who have lost their lives to partners who used the rough sex gone wrong defence. At the trial of Michael Roberts, the jury heard how Vicky had ligature marks around her neck, consistent with strangulation. Her arms and legs had been bound in duct tape before her body was placed in thermoplastic sheeting and concealed beneath a duvet in the garage. The trial would see a number of witnesses take to the stand. These included Lavinia Tolley, the co-worker who had turned him in. She told the court that she had insisted Michael give himself up, to which he responded that, quote, he planned to, but he needed time. When asked about his demeanour that day, Lavinia recalled that Michael was not his usual chatty self. He was quiet and withdrawn. She continued by stating that he told her it had only just hit him that his relationship with Vicky was over. Another witness, who was a close friend of Vicky's, took to the witness box. Lorraine Lee testified that when talking about her marriage, Vicky stated that she was not going to give up on him and wanted to work it out, advising the court that Vicky was distraught and heartbroken having learned about Michael's affairs. Lorraine also recalled text messages that she and Vicky's mum had received from Vicky's number, which told them that she had decided to leave Michael and stated that she planned to be away for some time. Lorraine added that these messages were not in the usual manner in which Vicky wrote, which made her concerned. The prosecutor, David Steer QC, presented the argument that these texts had been written by Michael after he had murdered Vicky, in an attempt to avoid suspicion by making people believe that his wife was still alive. To highlight Michael's callous actions following Vicky's death, the prosecution called for Janet and Graham Wynne-Jones to take to the witness box. Vicky's grieving parents were asked about the night they went to the apartment because they were concerned about their daughter's whereabouts. The prosecution asked Janet about the meal she shared with Michael. He ate steak and kidney pudding and chips without any problems. Yes, she replied. During the visit, Michael claimed that Vicky was, quote, going to take a step back for a few days. Janet also recalled receiving a text off Vicky the day after they had been to the apartment, and in support of Lorraine's testimony, she also stated that the wording and style were not what Vicky would normally use. Vicky's dad added to his wife's testimony, stating that Michael sat at the table and ate all his food. He was laughing and joking. Michael continued to tell his in-laws, quote, don't take this the wrong way, but Vicky is boring. The courtroom was silent when the accused stood to testify. Michael Roberts told those present that on the evening of Vicky's death, they had been out for a romantic meal, and upon returning to the flat, she had become flirty and began teasing him with the cord of a black bathrobe. He claimed that they had intercourse on the sofa, during which he placed the cord about her neck and she apparently told him to pull it tighter, an instruction she allegedly repeated 3 times. When he got off the sofa, he claimed that Vicky fell to the floor and didn't move. He told the jury he was waiting for her to jump up and say boo or rah. When he realised that she wasn't moving, he lifted her back onto the sofa and placed a duvet over her, as though Vicky had just fallen asleep. Michael confessed that he failed to call an ambulance, but couldn't explain why he hadn't done so. The prosecutor put to him that he did make a phone call that night to arrange a shopping trip for the following day with the woman he was having an affair with. In an attempt to explain this phone call, he claimed, I didn't want to deal with what was happening. Also, I had said I would call her. It would be weird if I didn't. It was revealed to the jury that the following day Michael did go to Chester shopping with his mistress. It was while in a shop that he called his mother-in-law to get some ideas for Christmas gifts for Vicky. Michael stated, I actually was looking in Debenhams for various things for Christmas, even though I knew she was dead. Upon leaving Chester, Michael and his mistress went for dinner at a local pub and spent the night at a hotel. That night, he proceeded to start sending text messages from Vicky's phone to people in her contacts, including himself. When questioned about why he sent them to himself, he responded, I hadn't heard from her all day. I knew I wouldn't hear from her, but thought to text myself so I could see her picture on my phone when I was all happy again. The defendant went on to tell the court that he loved Vicky and had not planned to leave her, despite the fact that he was having an affair, nor did he intend to hurt her or kill her. He tried to express his feelings of remorse by stating that he bought the thermal sheeting because it was winter and he didn't want her to get cold in the garage. Defence attorney Neil Flewitt asked Michael why he had fled when the police found Vicky's body, to which Michael responded, I panicked. It was the realisation of what had happened finally. Michael also claimed that while on the run, he considered ending his own life. He told the court that he booked into a hotel room. He put a pair of socks in his mouth and bound his mouth and nose in duct tape. Unconvinced by the defendant's claims of suicidal tendencies, David Steers QC told the jury that Michael was devious, a liar, and had no intention of killing himself. The prosecutor proceeded to ask Michael, why not just jump off the nearest bridge? Michael responded to this suggestion with, I realised Vicky didn't want me to die. Part of the prosecution's case focused on Michael and his infidelity, not only to portray his character, but to suggest a possible motive for the murder. The court heard that Michael was having an affair with 2 women, Kerry Hall and Karen Wilson. The wife of Michael's manager at work, Anne Lewis, who was also a mutual friend of the couple, advised in a newspaper interview how the relationship between Michael and Kerry Hall began. Kerry worked as an administrator for the phone retailer where Michael worked. and the couple met at a Christmas party in November 2008. Anne recalled her husband, Robin, telling her, quote, "Everyone was in fancy dress, and Michael was dressed as a pirate and Kerry as a sexy policewoman in a short skirt, suspenders and a low-cut white shirt. They hit it off, and eventually, for a laugh, Kerry handcuffed herself to Mike, and they spent the rest of the time flirting. At the end of the night, they disappeared. Mike later confessed that they'd gone to have sex." A few weeks later, Anne spoke to Kerry, having noticed a love bite on her friend's neck, and Kerry told her that she had been seeing Michael since Christmas. At this point, he had been in a relationship with Vicky for 5 years. The couple were engaged, and their wedding was currently being planned. 31-year-old Kerry told the court that her relationship with Michael was purely sexual, advising that they regularly had sex at her home, and their affair continued even after Michael was married. She shared what sex was like with Michael, quote, "that it was always gymnastic, there was always lots of action, he never stayed in one spot. It was new to me, so I was trusting him with what was going on." She recalled that he did place his hands about her neck a couple of times and strangled her, leaving bruises on one occasion, but she had told him to stop because she didn't like it. Despite admitting that the relationship had been just sex, Kerry did admit that her feelings for Michael had grown and that when he got married, she was devastated. Just 2 months before he married Vicky, Michael started another affair, this time with a 26-year-old called Karen Wilson, whom he had also met at a works party. This relationship was more serious. Police discovered that the couple had exchanged over 5,000 messages in November alone, and just a week prior to Vicky's death, Michael had told Karen that his marriage was over and that he wanted to be with her. It was Karen who Michael had called the night he had killed Vicky. He had called her within minutes of his wife's estimated time of death, and phone records showed that he was on the phone with Karen for over 2 hours, while his wife lay dead on the sofa. In a later interview, Karen distinctly recalls the memories of this conversation, now with the horrific knowledge that as Michael had been calmly speaking to her, his wife was lying dead on the sofa. During the phone call, Michael talked about the latest episode of The X Factor and their plans for going to Chester the next day. At no point did Karen have any inclination that something was wrong. She told the newspaper, quote, "He asked what I was doing and told me he loved me. We talked about the X Factor of all things. It makes me sick now to realise that Vicky was lying dead while we were chatting. The next day we went shopping together and then spent the night in a hotel. I believed, because of what he'd told me, that it was over with his wife and that he was single. I'd left my fiancé of 4 years, so I was single too. I remember actually jumping on the bed with glee at the time, because we were free to be a proper couple. If I'd known the truth, I'd have run screaming down the road." She advised that when she first met Michael, they were both drunk, and they had been talking about how unhappy they both were in their respective relationships. Karen continued, quote, "I was completely open with him, saying I didn't know whether to leave my fiancé. Meanwhile, he told me that his whole marriage had been a mistake. He said he and Vicky both felt that way. They had discussed it and agreed that they should never have gotten married. He said they weren't sleeping together anymore. I believed him, and when I did actually leave my fiancé, I still didn't know what would happen with Mike. I still thought of him as a friend." Karen added that the night before Vicky was murdered, Michael had sent her a text message saying, "Good night, beautiful, sweet dreams. I thought he was a genuine guy and actually cared. I thought we were destined to be together." Throughout her relationship with Michael, Karen was convinced that he was no longer with his wife, and didn't know that Vicky had become aware of the affair, a fact she only learned during the trial, when letters that Vicky had written to Michael were read out to the court. In these letters, Vicky had pleaded with him to end his affair and be faithful to her. One letter she had written shortly before her wedding read, quote, "I just want you to be honest with me. I have no intention of making things difficult between us. I don't want to argue, I just want you. But I cannot continue to share you with her in this manner. I want you to cut all ties with her. Mike, I love you. So much that I don't think you truly know just how much. I know that all this sneaking around is hurting you as well. I love you and I want to make our marriage work. I just hope that this last week has shown that to you. You seem to be hiding yourself even more from me. If I go near your phone, you react as if I've done something wrong. You are constantly texting everyone else, yet admit deleting every message. Mike, I have never read your phone messages and I never would. But it hurts that you do not trust me when you have access to and have even read my text without a second thought. I hide nothing from you and feel like I don't know you. Firstly, believe when I say that you mean the world to me. And although we've had some obstacles, we have always worked through them together. I can honestly say I love you more than ever because of this. I cannot wait for June the 21st, 2009, and our lives together. Having heard these letters, Karen reflected on her feelings regarding the situation, quote, "It's awful to think what she would have been going through, but at the time Mike told me he had moved out of the marital home and was staying with his parents, and I had no reason to doubt him. For months I didn't believe he could have killed her. I was convinced there was some big mistake. I was so messed up, I didn't know what to think." Messages that Michael had sent to Karen following Vicky's death were read to the court. These included declarations of love and him claiming he was crying at the thought of their wedding day. However, when asked about these messages, Michael denied that he had feelings for Karen, claiming he was just, quote, "stringing her along," and he continued to declare that he only loved his wife. To counter Michael's sex act gone wrong claim, the prosecution lined up evidence and statements that told a different version of events. They suggested that despite promising Vicky he would be faithful prior to their wedding, Michael was unable to keep his word, and his affairs continued. On the night of November the 29th, 2009, Vicky had uncovered evidence of his infidelity and decided to confront Michael. Only the couple know exactly what happened next, but the prosecution theorised that an argument ensued, during which Michael strangled his wife. They referred to the post-mortem, which suggested that an excessive amount of force had been applied to Vicky's neck, which was not consistent with the claims that she had been strangled with the bathrobe cord. Over the next few days prior to the discovery of Vicky's body, Michael took a number of steps to conceal his crime. He was seen on CCTV at a local supermarket and at a hardware store, where he purchased the thermal plastic sheeting, duct tape and bin bags. The prosecution then suggested that Michael returned to the apartment. He wrapped up Vicky's body and moved it into the garage where it would later be discovered. He then began a texting campaign advising Vicky's loved ones that she had left him and had gone to live with another man. He even rang his mother-in-law, asking for ideas on Christmas gifts for her daughter, even though he knew she was deceased. And he calmly sat eating a meal with Vicky's parents, while their daughter's body lay a few hundred yards away. He even showed them around the apartment and the garage to show them that Vicky had taken all her belongings. To make it appear as though Vicky had left him, he had emptied all her belongings out of the apartment and replaced all the bedding, which the prosecution speculated was because Michael was preparing for his mistress, Karen, to move in. Prosecution continued to emphasise the callous and cold demeanour that Michael displayed after Vicky's death, referring to comments he made to his co-workers in the days following the murder. One of them recalled Michael joking that he couldn't have killed Vicky because his car boot, or trunk to our American listeners, was too small to fit a body in. It was then pointed out that Michael had also spent a carefree day shopping with his mistress the day after the crime, and that he showed no signs of remorse or guilt. In fact, the landlord of the pub the couple visited remembered them being, quote, "loved up and all over each other." Not exactly the actions of a remorseful man. Having heard the arguments presented by both sides, the jury was sent to deliberate. It didn't take them long to return with a guilty verdict. Michael sat down and closed his eyes as the decision was read out, and the sobbing of Vicky's loved ones filled the silence. The judge, Mr. Justice Royce, proceeded to sentence Michael to a minimum term of 17 years, for the murder of Vicky Roberts. Addressing the courtroom, Mr. Royce stated, quote, "Vicky was a talented, vibrant, caring, lively and loving daughter. You cheated on her and deceived her during your relationship, before and after your short marriage. She deserved better than that. After the killing, you spun an elaborate web of deceit. The scale of your subterfuge was very considerable. You painted Vicky as the villain, who abandoned you for another man, and yourself as a wonderful and kind man. This was sickening hypocrisy. You went about it in a cold and heartless way to deceive her family and friends and induce sympathy for yourself. What really happened, only you know, but it is quite plain that her death was not caused simply by you using that bathrobe cord as a ligature. That is plain for everybody in this court to see, and the pathologist made that even clearer. The consequence is that many questions from that night remain unanswered, and it will be for you, perhaps, to decide whether you are going to tell the truth about what really happened. You must have intended to kill. I reached the conclusion on the basis of the pathologist's evidence. Anybody that tightens a ligature around the neck of a girl of 25, with a degree of force at the time you must have done, in my judgment, intended that she would die. Aggravated features concerned on concealing the body. You went to considerable lengths by wrapping material and duct tape, so you could wrap her in different layers and secrete her body in the garage. What would have happened had the police not been informed by Mr. Wynne-Jones when they were, is very much open to question. There are further aggravating features. In this killing you spun an elaborate web of deceit. You sent text messages reporting to come from her to you and from her to Lorraine, Vicky's friend. In these text messages you painted her as the one who had run off and abandoned you for another man, and you painted yourself as, in effect, as a wonderful and kind man. It is sickening and hypocritical. You used them in a cold and heartless way to deceive her family and friends, and no doubt to induce sympathy for you. It is difficult to imagine how you could have phoned Vicky's mother, pretending that you were shopping for Christmas presents for her, and asked her whether she had any idea what Vicky would like. No words can adequately express the terrible effects her early death has had upon her family and friends. You cheated on her and deceived her during your relationship, before you married and throughout your short marriage. She deserved much better than you. Following the verdict, the lead detective, Inspector Joe Miller, released a statement regarding the case, in which she said, "Roberts is a devious individual who has spun this web of lies to cover up the truth. It was very cruel of him to pretend Vicky was still alive, by sending fake text messages from her phone to her mother. He even called her mother to claim he was choosing a Christmas present for her. This was especially despicable. There is no doubt Vicky Roberts married the man of her dreams in June 2009. She was described as brimming over with happiness on her wedding day. She wanted to make her marriage work at any cost, and was willing to forgive him time and time again. But Michael Roberts couldn't accept his own failings. He is a coward, a deceitful and arrogant individual who thought he could take different lovers, while at the same time remaining in a loving relationship with Vicky. She must have challenged him about his mistress and begged him to give her up. That ultimatum cost Vicky her life." End quote. Lisa felt the immense loss of her sister and the shattering betrayal of her brother-in-law. She told the Liverpool Echo, "It was a huge shock. We thought we knew him. It was her husband. It was really hard to get that and process that. That it was someone we knew and trusted. Part of the family had done that. It was really, really hard. It was a massive eye-opener. It was almost like it was someone else that we knew living a different life. It was really hard because we thought we knew him and it turned out we didn't." She added, "Vicky would do anything for anyone. She was a lovely sister to us. She was my best friend. It's really hard to put into words, but she's my sister. You expect to grow old with them, and it didn't happen that way." These thoughts were echoed at the funeral service held for Vicky in January 2010. Led by Father Stephen Boyd, Vicky's eulogy stated, quote, "Vicky was a people person. She loved people and loved to spend time with people. She had a dry sense of humour, and she loved to share a laugh and a joke. When Vicky walked into a room, her smile would light everything up, and her smile was very infectious. Vicky comes from an extremely loving and close family. It's in that love and closeness that they as a family have found so much courage and strength to face this painful tragedy." End quote. Upon first receiving this case suggestion, I was stunned by the callous nature of Michael, and I couldn't help wonder what Vicky felt in those final moments. She would have looked into those eyes of the man she had fallen in love with, the man she had dreamed of marrying and had vowed to grow old with. And now, that once warm, loving gaze that she fell for was now cold and heartless as her life ebbed away before them. Thank you once again to Katie for suggesting this case to me, and thank you all for joining me for episode 45 of It's Murder Up North. Episode 46 will be available next week. So in the meantime, keep an eye on those shadows.